Thank you, Stephen. And we took things a little out of order, so I just want to make sure Stephen is properly introduced. So this is a test for your mind, how it works. I'm Roman, and Stephen Fox, as you can obviously tell, is an architectural historian and a fellow of the Anchorage Foundation of Texas. He's a lecturer at Rice University and the University of Houston. And he's the author of The Architecture of Birdsall P. Briscoe and a contributor to Volume 1 of the Society of Architectural Historians' 2-volume guidebook to the architecture of Texas, the buildings of Texas, Central, South, and Gulf Coast, which includes Palacios. And I'll go between Palacios and Palacios. So he's also a mentor, a friend, the godfather of my daughter, Lucy Valentina, in the back there, and a great speaker. And I alternate between Palacios and Palacios because when my wife and I, in 2019 or so, were looking for houses around here, I was told by a local realtor when I was off the phone with him at the end of the call, he said, "Oh yeah, son, by the way, we don't say it the way you say it. We say it Palacios, like eyelashes." So anyway, I thought that was great. So I'm Roman McAllen. I have some notes. I'm working with technology that's a little hard for me, so give me a second. I don't want to miss what I was going to say. And first, that I'm thankful and honored that you all have asked me to come and to speak here today, and honored that you would think that I might have something constructive to say, and I hope that I do not disappoint you. What we're talking about today, to a large extent, is authenticity of place. The National Trust for Historic Preservation had a movement. Next slide, please. And usually I have a clicker, and unfortunately for me, we're going to do it with Michael back there. Next slide, please. There's me, and my wife Lisa's in the back, and my 2 children, Lucy Valentina and Flora. And so the National Trust for Historic Preservation had this great program started a few years ago. It was called This Place Matters. And they offered these simple signs you could print out. And next slide, please. And they took off across the United States. Next slide, please. And it's just a wonderful message about it brought preservation down to the local level, and people really got into it. Next slide, please. There's one more. Just a little bit also about me. I'm the son of public school teachers from Houston. My parents raised me in Houston. My father was from Brownsville, Texas, and he was of Spanish, European, and native Mexican descent. And my mother was of purely English European descent. They taught me a lot by example, and they taught me that I should try to do better than them, minimally, at least, as good as they were. Minimally as good, but there was a sense that we should try to do well for ourselves, but I also want to look out for the neighbor. And so with their example in mind, I've learned to have respect and appreciate places, and the places that had meaning to my parents, and then have meaning to me. And I know you all might have experienced that. And so we're here now in the Baptist encampment, and I want to go to the next slide, please. The rest of my presentation is just off the cuff from these images. The definition of place according to Oxford Dictionary is a particular position, point, or area, a building or an area of land used for a particular purpose. Next slide. Next slide. Sorry, I put this together this morning. I worked very busy. I want to start with this image. This house is, and I'm going to forget the name, Stephen may have to help me, but it was near Kima. And when I was in law school at the University of Houston in 1991, I heard that the Girl Scouts were going to demolish this building and that it was in disrepair. So I drove down to the coast and went out to see it. And it was in pretty good condition, actually. And it was demolished in April of 1992. And I quit law school about that year. I have a year of law school before I went to architecture much later. But that was the beginning of my interest in preservation. I could not comprehend why such a great building was going to be demolished. And it was on dozens of acres that the Girl Scouts owned, and they put some tin buildings in its place for housing. I peeked through the windows and it had hardwoods that looked like you could eat off of them, nice and shiny. Next slide, please. The next thing about preservation is this is a little house that I bought in Houston, Texas, when I graduated, before I went to architecture school. And it was rented at the time for $350 a month. And I joked that I bought a little shack with an oak tree. That tree hanging over the left was just a massive, one of those 200 or 300-year-old oak trees. So next slide. I went about restoring it, and these pictures are a little out of scale, but on the right you can see at the top, it was fixed up. And I spent a couple years working on it. And I'm talking about this because I'm talking about the affordability of homes. And people often think that preservation causes gentrification, will cause their property values to go up, or it costs more to take care of their house. So the house, I sold it in I bought it for $42,000. I sold it a few years later for $143,000 and thought I'd hit the lottery. I pocketed some money, and then I used that eventually to go to architecture school, study historic preservation. Later in 2016, after I graduated, a friend of mine called me and said, "Roman, your house is for sale, and I'm going to buy it, and I don't want the house, but I have to pay $450,000 for it. You can have the house if you want it." Next slide, please. I got back to Houston, and actually, there it is. That's the slide I want. That's the house now, 2 townhomes. I did not know about historic preservation at the time, at the time I sold that. I didn't realize I could have gone down to the city and asked the city to designate my house a protected landmark. And then it would have been there forever, and would have protected the oak tree, which is struggling to live because they've limped off a lot of limbs off of it. And those homes there's 2 of them, believe it or not, they're about a foot apart, sold for about $750,000 each. And that's cheap these days in Houston. So there's a thing about preservation, and recognize that historic preservation can be used as a tool helps to stabilize and slow down development, which is always going to happen. Next slide, please. So this is a picture in Brownsville. I told you I went to architecture school. Then I graduated and went down to Brownsville. And this is a picture of a building. It's really one building with 3 storefronts. This was an animated slide. It didn't really work very well. So what you're getting is, there was a movie shot in the bar, the green wall behind that, and that movie had that Sally Fields and, help me out there, anybody know? I don't remember that actor's. Burt Reynolds and stuff. So anyway, they shot a film. The next slide, please. That building, what I've kind of done in the last 15 or 16 years is gotten into a lot of trouble to save buildings. And, oh wait, I forgot an important thing. I've got this hat on for a reason. I want to take it off. I have it on because it says Southland Hardware. That's my favorite hardware store in Houston. And preservation is also about local. It's shopping local and taking care of your local businesses. So here in Houston, in Palacios, we have Porter, Hardware, and Parker's, and I'm glad we do. I went to Porter's. I lived at Porter's while I was rehabbing the old place on East Bay Shore. I don't want to take that off now, but that's why I wear it. Next slide, please. What I did here, those are a bunch of maps, Sanborn maps, as Stephen said. These are some city workers. What happened is the city owned this little building that dated to the mid-1800s, and they were letting it decay. Next slide, please. It had fallen into tremendous disrepair. There was 3 storefronts. And next slide, please. It had holes in the roof. Next slide, please. That's pooling on the roof. Next slide, please. So the planning director at the city of Houston said, he's a young man, Ramiro Gonzalez, and he said, "Roman, I just came to the city manager's office, and he said you can fix that old building." I said, "Great, do you have any money?" And he said, "No, but you can use the city workers." So I knew that the building official for the city didn't like historic buildings. He wanted everything torn down that looked blighted. So I got those city workers you saw in that picture. I met them there one morning with no building permit and started cleaning up the building and cleaning out the inside. And that's just some of the city workers. And next slide. Eventually the building was, next slide, was red tagged and things happened. But what happened is the building official was trying to shut me down, but by then I already had the building looking pretty good. And so I had a meeting in the building. It didn't look like this yet, but I had a meeting in the building with some city council members, and by then everyone had bought into it. And the building officials in the back of the room looking really angry at me because he had told me we should have demolished it. Instead, it got fully restored, and an architecture nonprofit out of Dallas called BC Workshop moved into it. And next slide, they made it do you see a slide there? That's Building Community Workshop, that's their staff, a mixture of architects that are very highly trained. They're like Teach for America. They're young architects who work for a little less money to help out a local community. And that building became a hub for young life. Young people would come by and they were seeing their downtown revitalized, and they were part of the community, and it's done really good. Next slide, please. So how did I get here? Here's my answer. So I had Coleman Coker. Next slide, please. He was an architect that worked with Samuel Maccabee in the Rural Studio, which was in, I want to say, Alabama, Auburn University. And he was one of my professors at UT Austin. Next slide. And he had designed, for example, this seaside house in Seaside Beach, Florida, which is another community with very high regulations about the neighborhood. Next slide, please. That's Seaside, Florida. And next slide. But because of him, I had an assignment in Matagorda. And I started driving around here, and I came to Palacios a few times, and that's what got me hooked on it. Then Lisa and I were married, and we moved from Brownsville to Denton, and long story short, we were looking for a house, and we didn't get the one we got, but we found out the one on East Bay Shore. That's how we came here. So now I have a long series of slides about your city that I just grabbed from everywhere I could on the internet. So here we go. This is where we are, right? This is the Texas Baptist encampment. Next slide. And then here's a card. I can imagine Miss Bessie, it's signed by, I can't read that last name, but I like what it says. Dear Bessie, I can tell you how disappointed I was that you didn't come down this summer. So this place was an attraction. That was an angry dad, I think. Next slide, please. Here's the beachfront long ago. I don't know those buildings. Next slide. And I'm just going to go through these. They're sort of grouped together. Here's the encampment again, and here's some action on the encampment, some people, the Buckeye Association. Next slide. And there's the encampment. It looks like we're sitting in a place where there's nothing right now there in that image. Next slide. Next slide. And of course, these are buildings from the main street. Next slide. And some oyster work. Next slide. And next slide. I kept some of those in for the dates. You see them in 1908, 1910. Next slide. Some more people out on a pier. Next slide. This is just a long series. I just want you to kind of think about, all of us to think about the people in these pictures and their dedication to this place. There's a story behind everybody there. Everybody there has descendants. Some have left, some are here. And next slide, there's the elementary school. And here's some more. There's a series here of photographs of the pavilion. Oh, this one was interesting too. That's a matchbook cover. The next slide here, that was for the Woodridge Coffee Shop at 10 Ridge in Palacios. And there's one of the pavilion with the sailboats. Thank you, Michael, for just going through these. There's a Hurricane 42. And you think about, if you slow down a little, Michael, the people see it just a little. There's the image, Stephen, where I said there was quite a lot of buildings at one time. Right there, there's another angle of the residential buildings. This is the colored school, which has been restored and saved by preservation efforts. And some Main Street scenes. One of the houses. And when I look at it, I can't help but think about that campaign of "This Place Matters." And I feel it's what's driven me to think about historic preservation and work on it. It matters that people who were here before and they cared for this place, and we have an obligation to continue to care for it and to make the best of it. And they've left a few buildings that we can work with. And there's a few more here. A little bit we'll get to the Luther hotels, and then we're going to segue over to the next part of my talk. There's a Mexican. That's right. I didn't know that was here. Okay. This building is still here, as you see there. I think the next two pictures of it. That's it also. And I apologize if you own any of these pictures. I took them from you on eBay. All right, so this is some really old images of the Luther. These are some of them. I think the porch tells you a lot. This image, when it was probably early in its life, and it looks terrific. And then we're going to see, I noticed that it seems that it goes through a period that I kind of link to the Great Depression. It'll come up in a bit. There, like that image, those vehicles, late 1920s, early 30s, and the building in really bad shape. It makes me think that the country was struggling, and we were struggling here. And the next image is also that way. It's a little even later because that porch has fallen off now on the left. And the vehicles in the back are about the same period of time. And then I think Stephen was 1941. Then there's people who were getting out of that period of time and had a few more dollars and shored things up and added the court that was out to the left. And all along, the local media has been here. And I think that's really important. Very, very important that they have continued. And again, it's that local people, local business, local stories. So let's stop with this one. Now we'll bring it a little more forward to the story. So I think the process that the PPA has set upon with this meeting kicking it off, though, is to move forward and to make sure we survey the whole city and talk to as many people as we can from all backgrounds to understand what happened here and what's the full story. And for example, and I don't know her name, I think it says that they're Diana Wilson. This is a lady who, and some of you, do you know, raise your hand if you know what this is about. Okay, it's a couple of hands. So this is an environmental activist who recognized that Formosa, is that right? Formosa was dumping beads of plastic in the water over there. Now the reason I know about her, next slide please, is this book, The Fisherman and the Dragon. Who here's read that book? Anybody? It's a great book if you haven't had time. It talks about this place. The fishermen in that case are the Vietnamese and the Anglo fishermen that were working here. That the Anglo, and then the dragon in this case is the KKK. And so the book thoroughly researches the area, and it was this difficult time where the Vietnamese fishermen were being blamed for low catches, for the fishing dwindling, that they were overfishing, they were fishing more than they should be. the fisheries were being contaminated by chemical plants. And it really wasn't the Vietnamese at all that were the problem. And the book makes it full circle and it tells you about that. And I know there's a plant coming soon, and I'm not against chemical plants, but I do like clean water. And to that I say an interesting thing about where we all are here. If you ever hear a talk by the Texas Government Land Office, they do water quality checks up and down the Texas Gulf Coast. And aside from right here, the rest of the coast, maybe down in the valley around South Padre, you shouldn't be eating the fish. If you're fishing it out of the local waters, it's really polluted up in the Houston area. And I grew up fishing there. Maybe that's what's wrong, but I ate a lot of that. But it's interesting that I heard a talk by a GLO scientist, and we were down near Galveston, and he told me that they really don't know why, but the water station here that they check is always the cleanest in the area. They really do not know why. They're trying to figure it out. Next slide, please. And so that's what I said earlier, that part of this breakfast series is to add to this storyline, to see how everyone here in this community relates to this place and to one another, and then decide what it should look like going forward. Next slide. Because change is inevitable and things come along that unintentionally diminish the significance and do not authentically contribute. Case in point, next slide, please. I know there was, that we went again out of order. Next slide, please. So we're gonna talk, I heard recently from Houston, I get the Beacon at home, and I saw that the McDonald's decided not to come here. And next slide, please. I wasn't really worried because to me, they're gonna come in and they're gonna say, how fast and efficiently can we get the money out of your community? That's really what they do. There's nothing wrong with that because, next slide, they're publicly traded. That's what they're supposed to do. They're not thinking about the local place. Next slide, please. And so when this kicked off about saving the Luther, when somebody at the museum called me and said, Roman, no one knows it, but there's a contract to demolish the Luther. And they told me, and I came down to city council at a public session and said, hey, I'm here to talk about the impending demolition of the Luther. And one of the things I said is that shouldn't happen, and that you should play from a position of power with the foundation to try to save the building. So next slide, please. Historic preservation can tame those companies. Next slide, please. So this is a building, the farmhouse where Joseph Denton built in 1795 in Hempstead, New York. Next slide. It really is a McDonald's. It's fully restored, and they're in that building. And they needed to be in that community. They wanted to be in that community because that community is a great community. Next slide. That's the same building, and that's their drive-thru. Next slide. This is in Freeport, Maine, and over the door, you can't read it, that says McDonald's. There's a McDonald's in that building. It's the historic courthouse. Next slide. That's it also. So, next slide, and that's the original building. Now here's another picture of a building in Clearwater Beach, Florida, and that they have them. So the potential that I see for Palacios is if we can create a historic district somewhere down the line. And as I've been working for 15 years for 3 different cities, if a city can have design regulations, they can be a historic district. You can take a whole area and have it be that terrible word, regulated. And in doing though, you protect the community, you protect the values, and you protect the place. So that's that McDonald's. And again, I talk about why is it that way? They had to do it that way. They wanted to be there, but the city said, if you're going to come here, you're going to dress nicely. Next slide. And if they don't come, who cares? Next slide, please. Because we got some food in Palacios, right? This, of course, I know the point has changed hands, but hey, Anthony Bourdain likes Palacios, right? He came there, y'all know that. Who knows that Anthony Bourdain was there? Everybody knows that. Or how about Chelly's Cafe? I mean, my wife's favorite breakfast is Chelly's Cafe. Locally owned and employing local people. Now, there's one lady behind the counter here at Chelly's, but I've been in there where I feel like there's 6 different high schoolers helping me to get the food, right? And they get a sense of place, they work at a place. It's really nice. Not that McDonald's mistreats its employees, that's not the thing. The thing is that Chelly's local, and the motivation is different for that business. Next slide, please. And this is a PMR, Palacios Mexican Restaurant. By the way, I fixed these reviews up. They didn't seem accurate, so can you go back? I'm sorry, one slide there. You see it's got 5 stars and 10,000 reviews, right? I just couldn't resist it. Make it was a little off before. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And then the thing about preservation and the reason that Luther had to be saved is people don't tour Texas to see rudimentary places that could be anywhere. And so even Texas Highways covers trans. Next slide, from sleds, there's some guys working behind the counter at trans. It wasn't hard to find these pictures. I just put in restaurants Palacios, and there was a lot to be written about. Next slide. Here's Danny's. Fixed him up too. He's 5 stars and 10,800 reviews. And look, that's lunch right there.
Good stuff.
And there's Mi Casa. And the Dallas Morning News gave Mi Casa 5 stars. It's good. But really, Mi Casa is funny. When I was working on the house over here, I had the electrician Omedo. Do you know Omedo from Main Street? He did electrical work on our old Bay house that we bought that had been vacant for 20 years or so. And I had just gotten here, and I saw him one day in this van, and I said, Omedo, I want to get some Mexican food. Which restaurant should I go to? And he said, well, do you want good air conditioning or good food? I won't tell you, but he said, he said PMR had better air conditioning. Next slide. So again, local, the Pirate Queen. The next slide. And next slide. What do we got going? Again, I'm just talking about that local thing. People don't go around Texas just thinking, I can't wait to stay there. That's not really, you stay there and you're hoping that the buffet is good in the morning, but that's not why you travel to Texas. Next slide. I just put these in here, and I was supposed to talk about preservation across the state of Texas, and this is all I got to. I just didn't get to it, I apologize. But just think about it. Fort Davis, Texas, is a wonderful little town. It has the Fort Davis National Historic Site, and it has the McDonald Observatory. And then that whole region, again, that terrible word regulation, but Marfa, Fort Davis, Alpine, there's a dark sky ordinance. I know Marfa has the ordinance. There's no city of Fort Davis. It's not actually incorporated. But they have a dark sky ordinance. All houses that have lighting have to have lighting that faces straight down. And that's why it's the darkest place in North America. And if you want to, see the satellites, I've been out there and you can see Elon Musk's satellites actually getting launched. It freaked me out one night. We were coming home and we were driving around, Lisa and I got out of the van and I looked up in the sky and it just looked like a row of stars moving and disappearing. It just shocked me. I called her, she ran out and looked at it. I quickly Googled it and found out that's what the launching of satellites looks like. But anyway, it's great. San Antonio has the Alamo, the Riverwalk, Mission Trail, Waco. Their economy just went crazy after Chip and Joanna Gaines transformed the city and worked on historic preservation there. Of course, Brownsville, as Stephen's hometown, has Charlie Days, it has Padre Island, and now historic downtown with many buildings restored. When I was heritage officer there from about 2011 to 2014 or 15 or 16 there, many of the buildings that were really decayed would come up for demolition certificates of appropriateness. Now, because of the work that Stephen's referring to that started, a national registered district was created around the whole central part of Brownsville. Now, the economy wasn't strong many years, so the buildings weren't that threatened because people couldn't knock them down, didn't want to build anything new. But when they did have money, it would come up occasionally, and I would do my part to try to block the demolitions. And I'm so glad I did, because today, when you go down, the economy's a lot stronger. The Starbaits, which is down in Boca Chica, has lifted the economy quite a lot, and other things have occurred. And many of the buildings that I saw that were in extremely bad condition, and I'm telling you, you look at them and think they're just going to fall over, just a strong wind and they're gone. And those buildings have been restored and they look spectacular from the late 1800s and 90s. In Glen Rose, Texas, we just went to, it has the Dinosaur Park, and Fort Worth has the Stockyards. Next slide. But I really do believe that God had a hand in saving the Luther. Next slide, please. And there's a couple here about hotels, because had I not chosen to follow my heart and study preservation, I went to school at 37 to the University of Texas at Austin, and I really made just a hard decision. I was thinking of going to dental school, and I chose architecture and preservation. And then went to Brownsville because my dad was from there, and I wanted to be in the city that he passed away when I was in architecture school. And I wanted to be in the city that he was from to understand it more, to understand myself more. And in doing that, and then I got recruited to Denton, Texas, to be the preservation officer there, which, unlike Brownsville, so Denton County is the second wealthiest county in Texas if you take away the really low number of counties. And Cameron County, South Texas, is one of the poorest counties. I remember the job interview up in Denton when I went up there and talked to him. I toured around in town square, and I looked at everything, and it looked like a museum. Everything was immaculate. And I was sitting at the table in the interview, and they said, well, do you have any questions for us? And I said, yeah, I've got a question. I've looked around down here. You could eat off the floor at your main street, the sidewalk on your square. Everything here is perfect. All your historic buildings look perfect. And why do you even need me here? And they laughed and said, well, we have a historic commission that's a little out of control. And they're telling people what color to paint their houses and all this stuff. So, I can fix that. And we did. We had to teach that paint color doesn't matter. If it's a wooden building, it's probably good if it has paint on it. What color it is doesn't matter. And it takes a while. But once we got that commission going straight, everything went really well. Here's a couple of old hotels. This is why little towns matter. Boutique buildings. Next slide. Of course, the Gage, the Marathon, Excelsior Hotel in Jefferson. I was also asked to comment on what I told City Council when I came here about that. Next slide. I have a couple of reminders. One, what I presented so long ago was that the state law allows any local municipality to pass laws to protect historic resources. Towns don't usually do it, but they can step forward and block a demolition or landmark a building. Next slide, please. And the next slide. I showed all this to the City Council. The next slide. This one was important. I got to go over here and read it. But this is from, I had written to Amy Hammonds at the Texas Historical Commission, and she said, she was telling me how much it costs to become a Main Street city. And she's talked about that she'd love to see more coastal communities involved, and she was just really supportive. Don't remember now why. I thought there was a mention of the National District. Next slide, please. Authenticity in the sense of place is invaluable and irreplaceable. Next slide. So here's where we are. We're going to move to the next session. I think that's all I got. I don't know if that's enough. Sorry if that's not a lot, but I hope that is something to give you something to think about.